gamers, what is going on? Do I sound good, by the way? I had to like reset up a bunch of stuff. So I gotta explain what has happened with the streaming setup since we last streamed. Basically, we had a ton of issues, as you guys know, with multi-streaming previously. And what was going on there is that initially I was using Streamlabs in order to essentially do a cloud-based multi-stream, right? Because in doing it that way meant that I could save on local processing power, local GPU and CPU that was being used to process the streams, which would be important if we were playing games on stream, etc. And then I looked into it, and I think my current rig is just, it's well off enough that we can definitely stream 2 streams at the same time and it not have an impact. And then also my current internet is good enough to do that as well because I have a gigabit up and down. So I was like, you know what? After last stream where Streamlabs just really failed me one more time again, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm canceling my sub and I'm just gonna figure out how to set it up on OBS. So basically, I imported everything to OBS. I had a few errors with importing all my scenes and stuff, but I think I worked it all out. And yeah, so today I'm looking at both streams and it does indeed seem like they're both holding up, which is awesome. And this is also better for the YouTube side of things because it means that the YouTube VOD will have higher quality now. I know that sounds unrelated, but the thing is that with Streamlabs multi-stream, because it was mirroring a single stream, you had to go with Twitch's bitrate cap, which is like 6,000, very low. I would go over a little bit because it'll let you go over just a little bit if you're a partner, but then it'll give you like a warning saying, hey, don't go over. You're supposed to be at 6K, right? But unfortunately, you know, that was not like, we couldn't go to the maximum with YouTube. So now YouTube has like a 1500 kilobyte bitrate, so it's pretty fucking good. What's your graphics card? 4070 Ti Super. So it is definitely a beefy boy. It can definitely handle doing the multi-stream and gaming at the same time. So it shouldn't be a huge issue. Eventually, you know, maybe I will get like a dual PC setup. I know some people who do like, I think I've heard people who do like a Mac Mini as their like dual stream device. And obviously not a super powerful device, but it will handle basically the what do you call it? The dual streaming for you because it doesn't need to be, you know, that powerful, I suppose. But it works. So anyways, we have some interviews from Naoki Hamaguchi. And this is going to be a pretty exciting day because we got some cool stuff to talk about for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Potentially some actually good news. I feel like we haven't had good news in a while, so this is some more good news to share about the sales so far for 7R on the Switch 2, which has been something that I personally have been really invested in seeing. I'm also really curious on how it's going to perform in Japan because Japan is kind of the place to watch, right? Like it's kind of where we're most curious on how this is going to perform because Japan basically, you know, Final Fantasy is huge there, very beloved. However, it's on hardware that a lot of Japanese people don't own, which is a PlayStation 5. And Sony, I think they are trying to get ground in Japan again, right? The last State of Play that we had, they introduced a similar SKU to the one that Nintendo has, where basically they charge less for the PS5 in Japan. However, they're just trying to get the system out there, and then they will eventually make more money on there being a ton of units out and the game sales, etc. So it is interesting to see Sony try to claw their way back in terms of getting ground in Japan. But frankly, let's just be honest, Sony should have never fucking lost ground in Japan, right? They should have held on to Japan. It shouldn't have been a game where Sony is now having to play catch up to get back the Japanese audience. It's just really unfortunate. I don't think that it should have ever been a thing for them to have to claw their way back in Japan, but they fucked up clearly, and they are trying to get back that audience. So we'll see if that ends up happening or not. PlayStation 6 is probably going to be a portable, at least that's what like a lot of the leaks are saying, and I think that's fine. I think that's probably a good scenario, because I think we've kind of capped out on raw graphics. Better frame rates are something that we can still work on for sure, but in terms of visual fidelity, we have a bigger bottleneck with development cost than we do at tech, which is fucking insane to think about, right? Because you look back on consoles like, say, PlayStation 1 or 2, etc., and the problem there was that, I mean, not necessarily the problem, but the bottleneck there was that, okay, there's only so many polygons the characters can have on screen, etc. And now it's like, dude, we can fit all this detail on screen. However, we just don't have enough budget to make graphics that good. So it is kind of crazy that, that has become a bigger bottleneck than like literally anything else. So FF7R Switch popping off shows PlayStation exclusivity has to end. Yeah, I think so too. I do wonder just to what extent double dipping has had though for people in terms of like the sales. So like, are a lot of new people picking these games up, or are like hardcore Final Fantasy fans just like buying them a second time on PC and Switch? I don't really know, but I do think that this does bode well, and I do think that multi-platform, at the very least, being on PC day one, because I know so many people that really wanted these games on PC, and that's what they were waiting on. And I think that Rebirth's success on PC really does show that the people do want these games on PC, like really badly. And so many people have migrated to PC this generation. It's kind of what killed Xbox, I think, is just so many people saying like, fuck the console war. I'm going with the fucking PC this generation. And myself included. I think I have always leaned a lot closer to being a console gamer, but this generation, this past gen, I've just been like, man, fuck it. I'm PC all the way. I think it started really for me toward the end of the PS4 generation. And then once we got to like the PS5 gen, like fully, I was just like, yeah, I'm a PC gamer. And then once I built my new rig, especially, I'm like, hell, dude, I'm never going back. Never going back to consoles. No disrespect to people who do prefer consoles. I'm just saying that it's very clear that a lot of people have gone to PC this generation. Nintendo is still doing very well, obviously. So I do think, if they should be anywhere, it's probably Nintendo and PC. So we'll go ahead and talk about today's topic. I think the end of the PS4 generation was the last time PC building was actually a super good value. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that hardware in general is like not like a super good value right now. Squall UA, thank you for the tier one, and Botany Chris, thank you so much for the tier one. I think my alert box is currently broken because the sound did not go off for me, but I just saw it in the chat. Thank you so much. I will fix that next stream. But for those of you who are just tuning in, I essentially had to redo my streaming configuration, but now multi-streaming is going to work 100%. John Q, what's up, man? How you doing? Glad to see you in here. Okay. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about today's subject. So, GameSpot has dropped a new article that has an interview with Naoki Hamaguchi, and it's talking about AI, it's talking about Unreal Engine, and as the headline tells you, Part 3's title has finally been decided. So this is quite a lot of information. There's also a couple of other interviews that we're going to go through. I don't need the headset anymore. Take that off. But yeah, this is some pretty meaty stuff. So let's go ahead and go through it. The remake in Final Fantasy VII. Let's get to the quotes. Let's see. Director notes that it has also been a challenge. The team is dealing with the Switch 2 port of Rebirth. Okay, yeah, let's read from here. Hamaguchi is in New York to promote the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on the Nintendo Switch 2, giving us the opportunity to speak with him about the franchise. Regarding the game's performance on the device, which has been positively received by even the most diehard of pixel peepers, Hamaguchi says that while it was relatively smooth getting the game running on the hardware, the team spent a lot of time trying to achieve a stable frame rate, which has me pretty damn worried about Rebirth, because Rebirth honestly doesn't run at the greatest frame rate even on the PS5. It does run at a stable 30 and 60 respectively. I mean, however, the problem is that on PS5, the game, in order to run in performance mode, has to squish the resolution pretty badly, right? And then on the game's graphics mode, the resolution is incredible, but unfortunately, it does come at the cost of 30 FPS, right? And there really isn't a perfect mode for the game where you get a decent resolution and it's also 60 frames. Unfortunately, no matter what you're doing, the 60 frames is going to come at the cost of the clarity of the image, and it gets really blurry on performance mode. And so really, unless you're playing it on PC or you're playing it on a PS5 Pro, Rebirth graphically, not the most perfect game in terms of performance. So I'm really curious on how in the world they are going to get the Switch 2 port of Rebirth running really well, when you consider that Switch 2 is somewhere between the power of a PS4 and a PS5. The director also notes that it is a challenge. The director also notes it is a challenge the team is dealing with on the Switch 2 port of Rebirth, though Hamaguchi confirms the studio has managed to get the sequel up and running on the device. While we have gotten Rebirth to function on the Switch 2, we still need to make sure that the frame rates are stable. Our engineers are trying to fine-tune that and make sure we're optimizing properly, says Hamaguchi. So this is where he begins to talk about the use of Unreal Engine. He says the first two parts of the trilogy were built using Unreal Engine 4, which has since been surpassed by the release of Unreal Engine 5 in 2021. While Hamaguchi previously stated that the team has been considering transferring development of the final While Hamaguchi previously stated that the team had been considering transferring the development of the final title over to the more modern engine, he confirms with us that they are sticking with UE4 for the game. We've been using Unreal Engine 4, but we've made a lot of modifications to fit our needs, says Hamaguchi. It's more beneficial to have something we're already familiar with and have customized to fit our needs. This is something that I have been talking about for a really long time, since like Rebirth was like first and like the talks were coming out, right? They're not going to be switching over to Unreal Engine 5. It just wouldn't happen. And he basically confirms it here. You know, the reason that it would be such a bad idea is basically, as he mentions here, they already have a familiar tool set. Why would they upgrade and cost all that development time to get some marginally better graphics, right? And I don't know if better graphics are really what they need right now versus anything else, right? I think when it comes down to it, I would rather have a game that is a lot more functional, that is working properly, as opposed to... I mean, I guess, let me back up. I'm not saying that it wouldn't run properly on Unreal Engine 5. I'm sorry, I would... I didn't sleep well last night, so give me a little grace today. My brain is fried. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, as Panda Eyes puts it, Unreal Engine 5, the Switch would tremendously slow down development, and the benefit that it would give is incredibly marginal. I don't think it would help very much, if at all. I only see negatives from it, if I'm being completely honest. So I don't think it's a good idea, personally. If I were them, I would stick with UE5. I'm going to move this over so you can see chat a little bit better. Let me fix this. See if it'll let me... 1 second. So everyone can see chat. Oh, it's locked. That's why. There we go. Oh, fuck. That cuts off some of the text. I think that's perfect. Or as good as we're going to get. No, I think I like it up there. Anyways, I can't tell you any benefit that Unreal Engine 5 would have that would make it a better video game. It would make the game look better. It would make the game possibly perform better, which are important things. However, it would cost them time. And with the way Rebirth sales currently are, I can't imagine that they want to escalate the development costs of Part 3. Like, it's very difficult for me to imagine that they want to make this take more time and more money. And again, very marginal improvements on graphics, but even with performance, I'm not really sure that performance would be better on Unreal Engine 5, purely because we've seen so many Unreal Engine 5 games this generation that have had massive performance issues. So we would be trading off dev time and cost for, again, just marginally better graphics. And another issue, too, that Hamaguchi mentions is that they've modified Unreal Engine 4. So it doesn't just mean that they have to just switch over to Unreal Engine 5 or port the game to Unreal Engine 5. They also have to port all of the work that they've done over to Unreal Engine 5. All of the customizations that they've made to the engine over to the brand new engine, right? So that's going to cost them efficiency as well. And I don't think any of that, I don't think any of those costs are just worth the benefits that you're going to get from Unreal Engine 5, which again, I feel like are kind of marginal nowadays. Like, you know, there's not like a ton of UE5 games that are like performing super well. I think like one of the best performing Unreal Engine games of the past generation was Stellar Blade. And even Stellar Blade, if I'm not mistaken, chat, is still running on Unreal Engine 4, right? So I think they're fine sticking with UE4. There's no reason to switch over. I think for Final Fantasy 17 or whatever Creative Studio One works on next, that's a good opportunity to switch over and to port all the work that they've done over to that. But for right now, I would stick with Unreal Engine 4. Agreed. Using the latest and greatest isn't always the play. Yeah, exactly. Right. And especially as we talk about making Final Fantasy games faster and more cost efficient, the benefit of porting the game over to Unreal Engine 5 would definitely make things cost more and make things take more time. And I don't know about you guys, I would rather have part 3 now than have part 3 a year from now and say some of the lighting is a little bit better and some of the effects are like a little bit better. I think it's very clear to me that the right strategy is to get Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 out as soon as possible. I think that's the most important thing they can do. So Hamaguchi then talks about generative AI, everyone's favorite point of discussion. He says another aspect of modern game development that has become widely discussed is generative AI. In a previous interview, Hamaguchi stated that Square Enix didn't have any set down rules regarding the technology. However, in between that interview being conducted and published, Square Enix released a financial report that did lay out some ways it planned to utilize the technology. Partnering with the Matsuo Laboratory at the University of Tokyo, with the goal of using Gen AI to automate 70% of QA and debugging tasks in game development by the end of 2027. Hamaguchi saying, "My stance hasn't changed on depending on AI to produce something or to create something," says Hamaguchi. "I don't rely on AI to come up with ideas and things like that. That said, AI is a tool, and other colleagues would utilize AI is a tool that I and other colleagues would utilize so that our tasks would become much smoother, or some of the menial tasks are taken care of by AI. I think it is becoming more and more necessary. I think the purpose of using these tools is so that creators will have a better environment so that they can work more efficiently and they can explore more creative options." This is annoying me. I'm gonna pull this like right here. Actually, what am I doing? I should give me a sec. I should do it like this. There we go. That's so much better. Your hair is increasingly broccolified. Thank you. Using AI for lip sync to match different languages is a good use for it, right? And I think that AI leans more toward machine learning versus like, but I mean, it's all machine learning. So I don't know. The distinction between different AIs is like really tough sometimes. Right now it's tough to talk about AI in particular because it's all emerging and nobody knows what the acceptable use of any of this technology will be, because it's also new. Nothing like this has ever happened in the history of humanity Basically, we don't have anything to compare AI to. Some people have compared it to like the printing press and like other inventions throughout the years that like revolutionized certain industries. But I really don't buy those comparisons. I don't think that they're like accurate comparisons because we've never had anything that essentially has the theoretical potential, maybe, to automate all labor done by human beings, right? That has never existed before. And so because that has never existed before, I feel like all the comparisons to it are false equivalences. We really just don't have anything to compare it to. I do know that I firmly do not believe, as things currently stand, that games from a creative perspective, in terms of their art and music and their core ideas, should be generated by AI. That I'm pretty strong about. I think art should continue to be art made by people. Yeah, menial task, time wasting stuff, things that no human being wants to do. I think I'm pretty open to that stuff being automated by AI. Not saying that it should be or it shouldn't be. I'm just saying that, like, if we're going to automate some stuff, then I would rather it be that and not the creation and the soul of an artistic product, right? Um, as they've mentioned before, they have used a type of machine learning to do um, lip syncing, for example. They've used that type of AI. I don't think that really counts as Gen AI in the same way that, like, image generators or like LLMs really work. But AI has become such a broad term that it's getting applied to everything, even stuff that is not necessarily generative AI in like the way that we traditionally think about it. Some just traditional machine learning features are now being relabeled as AI, um, because AI is kind of just like the marketing thing to push those features. And in reality, it's just like the type of machine learning that has always existed. Um, and so, but again, some people see AI on that and then they're like, boo, because they're confusing that type of AI application with, uh, say, like Chat GPT or something like that. And those are fundamentally, that's a pretty big distinction, I think, between those two. Um, anyway, Hamaguchi continues by saying, Hamaguchi proceeds to address the automation of the QA process with generative AI, saying, quote, some of the quality control tests require very menial tasks, like collision check, says Hamaguchi. It's a tedious task that's very repetitive. By automating that using AI, we reduce stress on the human that is required to check on it. It would just flag an alert, and then the developer would get that information. So we're hoping that would lower the bandwidth that is required for our people. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to be super mad about that application of it because, again, it's not touching any of the creative side. It's not pushing faulty code. It's not creating really fucked up generated assets or anything like that. Um, that being said, you still want human beings deeply involved in the QA process. I don't think that Square Enix's goal of 70% of QA being done by AI is realistic at all. I think that Square Enix's current software, like if you play Final Fantasy 16 or Rebirth or any of their recent games, they're very bug free. Like they're very uh, well-functioning video games. However, I do think that if they actually do the majority of QA by AI, that's going to be disastrous. I think the example that he uses it in right here makes sense, right? Like, okay, it's going to do something like, collision checks just to make sure that all the collision boxes are fucking working right. Um, that's like whatever, man. Like no one's going to give a fuck. But I think that when it starts, when it starts generating the art and when it starts generating animations and music, I think that's when a lot of people are going to have really big problems with it. And that's when we're going to get like a lot of slop, right? So the use cases for the generative AI, as it said here, this seems like a pretty decent use case for it, but I don't know. Even if it starts generating the bulk of the code, I think that's also kind of a problem too. At least with the way that LLMs currently are and the quality of code that they output, which is not it's just not high quality code. Um, LLM code is decent when you have a senior developer there to clean it up, someone who actually knows what the fuck they're doing, and someone who knows how to janitor that code. It can speed up a developer of that level. However, when you are pushing that code and you're a junior and you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and you vibe code like an entire project, that's going to be a huge problem, right? No matter where you stand, I do think that it is kind of inevitable that everyone is going to be using this technology to some degree. A lot of it is just because of investor pressure. It's why companies who, even though the people working for the company making the features really may not even believe in, AI's ability to fully automate some of this stuff, or at least the current technology with AI is not able to automate this stuff. They still push it in there because investors are like, AI is the move now. We need you to insert those AI features. And there is pressure on the team to implement those features. Otherwise, funding will be cut. Company stock will crash. And that's the biggest thing. Trying to replace all your juniors with AI is unsustainable. What the fuck do you do when all your seniors retire? This is true in all aspects, even QA. No, you're 100% right, Skyline. This is the problem. It's not even like whether the AI is necessarily good or bad. I mean, eventually it's going to get like scary good in a lot of ways. But the problem is that what happens when you don't have qualified, knowledgeable people in order to janitor it and validate it and make sure that everything is actually being generated properly? That's actually kind of the big long-term issue with artificial intelligence as it currently stands, is that if you replace all the people who do the smaller junior jobs, then seniors, people who are qualified and deeply understand that work, immediately are going extinct, right? And so one could even argue, in a sense, that seniors in all knowledge professions at this point, because of how all these companies are trying to push AI, are going extinct from this very moment onward, right? So that's a huge problem. We need new juniors coming in. We need people learning to become qualified. And we need them to actually understand it. And also, we need them to not learn those things purely based on having the AI there to be a crutch, so that so that they can eventually become qualified enough to even use the AI well enough in the long term. I just read that on my bad. AI isn't going anywhere but needs regulating, as all things need rules and consequences for abusive implementation. I think that is probably the bigger thing about AI than anything else, is that right now it's just the Wild West, right? We had the recent Grok Goonpocalypse that happened. We had just so many like insane things that have happened with the use of AI. And the problem right now is just that there is no regulation. And the part of the reason that there's no regulation on any of this is because of the AGI chase, right? Everyone is willing to accept whatever these things spit out just so that we can get AGI like 0.5 seconds faster. So no one's doing anything about it. And of course, our law moves really, really, really slowly, at least here in the US. And, kind of in most Western countries, it tends to move pretty slow. And unfortunately, tech moves really fucking fast, right? Like we've had, the Will Smith eating spaghetti thing. And that was like 2.5 years ago, where that looked ugly as hell. And now 2.5 years later, you go back and you look at like the Will Smith eating spaghetti video generated on the latest models, and it's virtually indistinguishable from reality, other than some of the physics are a little wonky. But in another 2.5 years, is that going to be an issue? Maybe not. Right? So it's a very tough situation. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen in terms of all of this. It's kind of just a wait and see game. Hopefully humanity doesn't end. But hopefully we can get most of the benefits without the very, 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 very numerous downsides of the technology. But there are upsides too. But currently, it's not regulated. There are so many ethical concerns. There's so many problems. I don't know where things are going to be. Even next year, I don't know where things are going to be with this technology and what's going to happen in the world. It is literally that unpredictable currently. So I think that the use case that he mentions, I'm not opposed to that being automated. However, I think Square Enix's ambition to automate 70% of QA is a fucking awful idea, and it will come to bite them in the butt. Automating 70% of QA will absolutely not work. 100%, it is going to be a disaster if they do that. If they automate certain tasks, I think, like this, it could probably work out okay and save time and money. But I think if they try to go too far with it, it will not work out. And it will cause more problems than it will anything else. For me, it's easy to foresee this being used. I think they'll do it, and then what will happen is that it will cost them more money to patch the game, because it'll have like all of these glitches and fucked up shit in it that the AI simply didn't catch, and that a human being would have. And then they'll be like, okay, now we're not using it anymore. Or at the very least, they'll say, now it's only one facet of our QA process, but we still mostly rely on human beings, which is what I ultimately think of. I'm glad to see that Hamaguchi sees it as a tool and not a replacement for his colleagues. because so many people right now do not see it as a tool. They see it as, this is going to basically allow me to fire everybody and not have to have real humans, and not have to pay out as much to other people. And so I'm glad that he sees AI as just another tool in his belt and not a replacement for real human beings doing actual art and creative work. Master Shadowkey, what's up, man? Survive the winter apocalypse? No. I still have, I don't know how many inches of snow, but it is basically covered my entire driveway. I'm not leaving home anytime soon. Unfortunately, we are snowed the fuck in here, so. And it's not a terrible amount of snow for anyone who lives up north, but unfortunately, we in Texas are just not prepared for any type of winter storm, even though we have one like literally every fucking year. But we're not equipped to drive on it. We got about 20 inches in Mass. Oh my god, dude, fuck that. I think we got like 5 inches. So we're good. They were right about their concerns with the internet too. It came with the pros and cons for humanity. Yeah, I mean, that's probably like where I see a lot of AI stuff like landing, is that like, if you think about social media has come with so many negatives. And I know that there's a little bit of hypocrisy on my part, where obviously I'm making money on social media and it is my full-time job. But at the same time, this shit is also kind of toxic. Like I have to put like actively try to put this thing down more, and to not look at social feeds as much, and practice a lot more awareness of how I'm using social media, and like looking at my screen time and making sure I'm not using it too much, and putting screen time limits on and things like that. Because social media will fucking eat you alive, dude. It is basically, I don't want to say ruined, but it has fucked the next generation super hard. Like so badly. And now all of art is being made around social media, right? Social media is now deeply impacting art, to the point of where you basically have to make art around what people are going to say on social media, right? It sucks. It sucks. It has basically ruined us in a lot of ways. At the same time, you know, the internet allows people to work at home and to create things that improve people's lives, and it allows me to do what I do and to connect with all of you. And many of people have, you've met like your husbands and wives on the internet. And so, you know, the internet in itself has even been like a mixed bag. Maybe not the internet itself, but like social media itself has been like such an incredibly mixed bag. And so I feel like, you know, every time we build this piece of tech, we go forward as a people and as a species, and then we also take this step back that we don't see until we're like a decade in, and then we're like, oh fuck. we kind of ruined ourselves. The social media shit is definitely toxic, and I'm saying that as a journalist who knows how this shit goes. Social media has killed most journalists, TBH. It's sad. Yeah, I know. I'm not big into it, but social media is inevitable. People talk about shutting it down, but it's not going to just be immediately reinvented. Yeah. That's human nature. Right. And so we keep inventing these things that our human nature is not equipped for. Some studios are hiring talent based on their social media following. Crazy. Really? I believe it. I believe it, bro. I 100% believe it. So then Hamaguchi was asked, 2025 marked the 10-year anniversary since the start of development of this trilogy of titles. Ahead of the series' conclusion, we asked Hamaguchi whether the team is eager to move on or is savoring its final months, potentially years, with Final Fantasy VII. That's a good question and also a difficult question to answer, says Hamaguchi. We want to see it through, and we want to meet, if not surpass, fan expectations with the final installment. But it would be a lie to say I haven't thought, oh no, there's still more to get through, especially when transitioning from the first to the second game. But now that we're seeing the conclusion of the trilogy, there is no wavering. We are focused, and we want to see it through. Awesome. Very good interview. And then we also have a Polygon interview. I think we can actually put most of Polygon on screen. No. Let me see. I'll just crop the headline. But it says that Queen's Blood will be enhanced and powered up in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. Let's see. We don't still know much. Polygon spoke to. Okay. So here is the important part. The Hamaguchi quote. So Hamaguchi says about Queen's Blood is a very popular and beloved minigame. I believe that people are still wanting something like that, Hamaguchi told Polygon. I want to expand on Queen's Blood so that we are enhancing it and giving you a more powered up version of it when you see that third installment. Queen's Blood is still going to be available in the third installment. We just want to expand on it. Good. Good. Is this the first time they've confirmed Queen's Blood in Part 3? I think they've hinted at it before, but this is probably like the most explicit that he's been about it, maybe. But I'm pretty sure that they've talked about it before. I think it is awesome that they're bringing Queen's Blood back. I think that Queen's Blood is probably the best minigame in Final Fantasy, period. I really love Triple Triad, and if you had asked me before like what my favorite FF minigame was, I would probably say that. But I think Queen's Blood is just better, like all around. The different cards, the different effects, the different strategies. It is just such a good, fun game. I know a lot of people are hoping that they make like a mobile game version of it, and I would totally play that. I think it's really cool. Fans have already made like a version of Queen's Blood that you can play through the web. I don't know if it's still up. But it was up previously, and that was really awesome. And so, I don't know, man. I'm really hoping that eventually there's like a multiplayer Queen's Blood game that you can play with other people. Aside from Queen's Blood, Hamaguchi stresses that minigames will still be a big part of the third installment. That includes doing justice to the original Final Fantasy VII snowboard minigame, which occurs after the events covered in Rebirth. In the original version, players have to guide Cloud to the Great Glacier in the downhill snowboarding minigame where he must dodge snowmen and trees. So I think this is the first time that we've explicitly gotten confirmation that the snowboarding minigame is going to be returning. So he says, snowboarding. This is something that fans have really deep memories about, Hamaguchi said. I'm afraid I can't delve too much into the details, but we understand that it's not going to be a simple snowboarding minigame. We want to make sure that it's incorporated into the story to have that sort of connection with the theming of it. Okay, that's really curious because it sounds like there is going to be something happening narratively around snowboarding that is going to make it different than how it currently is. That has me really interested because I'm super curious on how they're going to shake that up. I'll move this over slightly. While Hamaguchi didn't spill any more details about the next game, he did provide Polygon with an update about how far along its development cycle is. The project might be further along than fans are expecting, considering that Rebirth launched on PlayStation 5 just 2 years ago. He says, in terms of the third installment, I believe we are coming along very smoothly, Hamaguchi said. We have to set a schedule up for ourselves, and I believe we are tracking on time for the milestones we have set. So I'm really thankful for the development team, and I have so much respect for them working on this project. I believe that at this point, the game is playable, technically, but we are still trying to polish it so it is at a quality where we can deliver it to our players, which suggests that they are pretty far along with this game. I think that this game is a lot closer than people think. I think it's entirely possible that we can even see maybe a reveal this year. You have to think that for the most part, the map and all the important stuff is already done, right? So the world map is mostly completed with Rebirth. They're adding a few new locations with this, so they have to do like Icicle Inn, and they have to do Wutai and those types of places. But like in terms of getting this out, in terms of like what they have to do, creating environments and creating assets, I think that they're mostly there already. So I'm not too terribly surprised that this is so far along. They have a steady pipeline. They've had one in place since the beginning. And they have a really good system for cycling teammates on and off. Under the ocean? Yeah, I know. And I know they're going to expand, like, exploring under the ocean. The submarine is going to be super fucking sick in this game. I think that, as much as we talk about using Rebirth as a blueprint, I think we're probably going to look at part 3 and say that that's actually the blueprint for, like, what's going forward. Because obviously they will have refined everything that's currently present in Rebirth, and they will have taken that a step even further with part 3. They will have implemented airships. They will have implemented the submarine. Vehicles are already there because, we had things like the Tiny Bronco and the buggy. So we already have the buggy and the Tiny Bronco, and like basically it's already built for us to have all the core FF elements. And this is why, and obviously this comes up every stream, but this is also why I know some people talk about like building off of like 16 instead of like Retrilogy. But I'm like, dude, it's not just about the combat for why I say they should build off of Retrilogy. Yes, the combat is clearly my preference. And the preference I want to say of probably most Final Fantasy fans. I don't have like a definite way to prove that, but I would say that of our community at the very least, whenever I polled it, no matter how many ways I polled it, you guys are very firm in believing that combat is the future. And whenever I see other posts, it also seems that most people are very much on the same page about it. But it's the fact that Retrilogy has already accomplished things like getting an airship working, getting a world map working, getting something like the buggy working. So again, we have multiple vehicles, all these different things, how to make multiple playable party members work, right? And so I think that if you talk about building off of 16, it's not just about building off of the battle system. It's also about building off of the incredible library of assets that they created for Retrilogy, or building off of the insane amount of code that they created for Retrilogy, a lot of which can be reused on Unreal Engine 5. And so, yeah, like I know some people are like, I like 16's combat better, so that they should reuse that. Fuck you, NSP. But at the same time, again, it is not just combat. It is not just combat that I think they should be building off of with Retrilogy. It is all this other stuff that has been created for this game that generally rebuilds the PlayStation 1 and honestly applicable to the Super Nintendo style as well, and NES style, like Final Fantasy. The Final Fantasy basically of the golden era, they have taken all of those elements and made them a 4K HD thing that can be reused and reskinned and basically make all future FF games just as ambitious and way cheaper. It'd be a tragedy to not build on all that good stuff. Dude, they got 3 games worth of stuff that they built out. 3 games worth of stuff. And, as ambitious as I think Square Enix is with Final Fantasy sometimes, I feel like that ambition cost them so much a lot of times too. Like, Square is honestly in a position where fans are kind of asking them to do less. Have you guys thought about that? Where it's like people are basically asking them like, "Hey, could you like actually stop reinventing the wheel?" Do you understand how good of a problem that is to have? People are asking you, "Hey, could you not do all of that and we would be happier?" Fans are asking for you to put out something cheaper and easier and faster. That's fucking awesome. That's like the best scenario that you can possibly have. That people are asking you to stop wasting money on the thing that they don't want. Like nobody, most people, most fans I've talked to, they don't want a new system. I don't know anyone who's like they need to come up with a brand new system. Like 90% of fans are in that situation right now. They're like, please don't come up with a new action system. Either reuse like the system that you already have in Rebirth with Retrilogy, go back to turn-based, and then there are some people that even say, "Hey, I want more of like Final Fantasy 16's combat." But like nobody is saying like, "Hey, could you please like make sure that Final Fantasy 17 like reinvents the fucking wheel again and makes like yet another polarizing video game that half of fans think is like an underrated masterpiece and the other half of fans fucking hate." People are literally asking you to fucking stop. They're asking you to stop, dude. Like that's a great situation. Every other company is like, "Oh, you're putting out the same slop. No one cares." And like with Square Enix, it's like, dude, you guys refuse to make the thing that we've asked you to make, and now you've made it, and now you might ditch it again. What the fuck? Don't. So yeah, I mean, they're not in a bad place for sure. They can innovate within the system, but for the love of God, stop winging it. Yeah. That's kind of the problem. Is that like classic Final Fantasy used to innovate within its systems. And I think the problem with modern FF is that modern FF is like every time they just throw the last thing away and just start over again. And so when you go back and you look at the classic FF titles, there was like a very clear progression of them trying new things with their existing like formula. And now it's just like every game is a brand new formula, right? And this is also adverse in terms of building an audience, right? Because if you like Final Fantasy VI, there is a strong statistical chance you will like Final Fantasy VII. If you like Final Fantasy VII, there's a strong statistical chance you will like Final Fantasy VIII, even though 8 is, a little bit polarizing, but still, most people who do like 7 still do like 8, right? If you poll people, it might not be like as strong, but still, most people who like 7 will like 8. Most people who like 8 like 9. Most people who like 6 through 9 also like 10, right? Like and that's because they're all vaguely similar games, right? They do different things. They're radically different in a lot of ways, but they're all like within the same genre, and they're all a type of game that's an easy recommendation for the next one. But now it's like, if you like Final Fantasy 13, you might hate Final Fantasy 16. If you like Final Fantasy 16, you might hate Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, right? And that's fair. That's fair because they're so different. They're so fundamentally different as video games, and completely different genres, by the way, right? Like 13 and 16 are not even remotely the same genre or type of video game in the slightest sense, right? The only thing is that they both have a lot of cutscenes and they look pretty. They have those things in common, right? Um, it's also funny too because if you look back at like say 6 through 10, the art style was changing almost every game. And even though the art style and the setting was changing every game, because the gameplay had more continuity to it, there wasn't as big of a discussion on whether something was Final Fantasy or not. I mean, it was always there, right? Like, there are definitely people, you know, back in 2000 saying, like, FF8 is not Final Fantasy because it's too modern or whatever the fuck. But just not to the degree that it is now. The degree that it is now is, like, it's fucking insane. It's fucking insane. Different groups of Final Fantasy fans are mortal enemies now. People that like 16 beefing with people that like Rebirth and stuff like that. It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, we already talked about that one. That was in the other interview. So, there is some good stuff happening. We'll take a look at Arrow's tweet here. Let me center this. Okay. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake has been selling out physically, obviously, everywhere. It is sold out at Target. It is sold out at GameSpot. It's sold out at Best Buy. This tweet is actually a little bit dated. I don't want to say dated, but it doesn't include the fact that it is also sold out on Amazon. I think they made it before Amazon sold out. But so yeah, it's sold out at all retailers, and it's also sold out at Amazon now. It's also a #1 bestseller at Amazon, and it's at the top of the eShop charts. Now, obviously, this does depend on how many copies they printed, right? Obviously, if they only printed like 10,000 copies, then it would sell out. But hopefully, they have printed a sufficient number of copies, and those copies have also sold out, and the game is just doing phenomenally well. I don't have any reason currently to believe that the copies were underprinted or any such situation like that has happened. They might have underestimated demand. I mean, I guess you could say actually that they did underestimate demand because it has sold out. But in either case, this is great news. This is great news because it means that the game is likely either meeting their expectations by virtue of it selling out their shipment and what they expected to sell, but likely, since it is selling out their shipment, it is probably exceeding expectations. Hamaguchi himself went ahead and dropped this tweet to show his thank you for everyone who's been buying the game. He says, "Thanks to your support, the physical edition is slowly becoming hard to find worldwide. Thank you. Future prints are not expected to include the Magic the Gathering card pack. If you want the physical edition, please consider getting the first print version with the cards while it's still available." I gotta say, man, including the Magic the Gathering card set with the game was a really, really, really smart idea to get people to buy this. Incredibly smart. I actually believe that probably a lot of people bought this to get the Magic the Gathering booster. Like 100%. I think a lot of people were just like, dude, I already own the fucking game. I just want the Magic the Gathering booster. And you know what? To some degree, there might have been some Magic the Gathering fans who were like, fuck it. I'm just going to buy Final Fantasy VII Remake and get the Magic the Gathering pack. I might have some cards in here that I can sell that are worth more than what I paid for the game. So in either case, putting the fucking card pack in there, brilliant idea. Obviously not something they can replicate going forward for future releases, but for this port in this particular case, brilliant idea. $40 for the game and the Magic the Gathering cards was fucking genius. Absolutely. NSP, how can people get them to buy Rebirth, and what should the price expectation be? I would say Rebirth will be $50. I think it'll be up by $10. And the reason is one, Rebirth is going to cost more to port than Remake is, because Rebirth is just simply going to be a bigger challenge to get working on the hardware than Remake was. And also, too, Rebirth is a more recent video game. And so I think that it's going to be priced at $50. I don't think it'll matter too much because I do feel like they will sell a triple bundle whenever the third part comes out. But holy fuck, man. Will you even be able to like install that on your Switch? You'll have to have like the biggest like micro SD express card in order to install it. I really do think that they should have included more storage on the Switch too, but maybe it's glad that they didn't, considering SSD prices right now. So I would expect a dual pack with Remake and Rebirth. If that costs more to produce physically, I bet they will give a different Magic the Gathering strategy. That's also very possible. But then again, though, too, I feel like, I don't know if they would do a dual pack with Remake and Rebirth, like physically. Well, I guess it wouldn't matter because you just have like a game key card, right? You wouldn't have to fit both of them or give two game key cards or anything like that. I guess it wouldn't be too difficult to do. Repodeski, how's it going, man? Um, yeah, that was my only point of contention with the Switch 2 version of Remake when I reviewed it, the game size. Yeah, basically it takes up the entire fucking storage. Like all of it. And that's a lot. That's a lot on Switch 2 because you don't get much internal storage. And then you have all of these game keycard games. And I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm a PC gamer, right? So I'm already used to everything being digital. I've been like all digital for a while now. I own one physical copy of a PS5 game, and it's because it was gifted to me. Everything else, I basically overpaid for my PS5 because I bought the version with the disc drive, and then I never bought a single disc-based game for the system. I ended up buying all digital, and part of that is because I moved. And if you've moved recently and you have all these fucking boxes, if you have to even think about one more box, you will lose your fucking brain and or lose your mind, whatever the fucking expression is. I lost my fucking mind moving, and I had all these boxes and I had games and stuff like that. I would say that 90% of my physical library, like 95% actually, is still at my mom's house. And I moved out quite a long time ago, so my be like most of my hardware, my old hardware, like my PlayStation 2, my PlayStation 1, my Xbox 360, all of that, my NES, basically all of my systems that aren't current ones are like still sitting at mom's because I was like, Mom, I don't want to deal with all this. Store all my games, and she's kept all my games. They're all sitting in boxes and shit, but so, and then the other half of it is that once I started playing stuff on PC, I just became way more like digitally inclined, right? And so after that, I kind of gave up physical, and they just keep making physical more and more inconvenient. And it's basically kind of gotten to the point of where I feel like the only convenience of it is that you can loan the game to a friend. But even then, with like family sharing and stuff like that, you can usually just have a friend like log into your account and play it that way. So, yeah, it's just not as convenient or fun, honestly, as it used to be. Do you guys remember when you get maps and fun little bonuses and shit whenever you'd buy the physical game? And nowadays, you don't get shit, man. You get a plastic case, and then the game is also not on the fucking card anymore. You still have to download the fucking game, and it's literally just a DRM key. And so at least I can say here with the Switch 2 version of Remake, they did make the physical edition of this fun. Yes, it's game key card, but also like, you get the Magic the Gathering cards, which is the type of bonus that you used to get back in the day. And now you don't get that shit no more, bro. You don't get that shit no more at all. Like it's you just get plastic ass case, no printed instruction manual. I remember when PS2 games had a memory card holder. Yeah. And I don't even know why the fuck they did because why who's going to use that? Who's going to put their memory card in like a random game case? I don't know. But dude, it was tight as fuck. It was tight as fuck. Um I'll always prefer physical media no matter how inconvenient it is. I understand that. I do. But I also think that like the way to resolve ownership for video games and also to allow people to have the convenience of buying digitally is to just implement what GOG already has. And that's DRM free gaming. And so with GOG, I can make a copy of a game and I can make my own physical edition. I can literally burn that game to a disc and give that disc to my friend and they can use it. I can make as many copies of a game as I fucking want to. I can back it up any way I fucking want to. And also, you don't have to be logged in to GOG in order for the games to work. Once the game is installed on your system, it's yours to do whatever the fuck you want with it. And so I do think that if you want to talk about preservation and keeping games and like being able to preserve them, nobody does it better than GOG. Nobody. And not even physical really can match what GOG does. Because even with physical, you have to like, oh, if your disc gets scratched, then that's it. There's nothing you can do. With GOG, it's like, dude, you can literally make as many fucking copies of that game as you want. You can re-download it, whatever. So I think that that's like the real future of video game preservation. But if we're being entirely honest, there probably is no way to preserve video games without sailing the seas. Like if we're just being real. Not a encouragement of sailing the seas. not an endorsement of it. But I'm just saying that like if we want to talk about like, legal stuff and being able to access games in the future, sailing the seas is probably the only way to do it, like long term, because there are so many things that legally can never be distributed again. The laws will never work out, right? And the problem with physical is that we do have a limitation that physical will still be accessible for you maybe 10 years from now, but is someone who wants to play that obscure game, is it accessible for them to pay like $400 to get access to that game that is no longer in circulation? No, right? Like, so I think that like in terms of preservation, there currently isn't, outside of GOG, there probably isn't a legal way to actually do it. Not in an effective manner, I don't think, honestly, which is unfortunate. Yeah, GOG is a storefront on PC that lets you buy games without DRM. DRM is digital rights management, which is basically the stuff that makes sure that you have to be logged in and that you have to like legally own the game. It also causes like a ton of performance issues to do DRM on PC because DRM basically like it'll do like routine checks to make sure that you're still owning the game, which sometimes can cost system resources. And so, yeah, I do think that digital ownership rights need to be expanded through the law. And I think people need to be concerned about that more than anything else. Right? Because if digital ownership laws are good and thorough, then you will own the games that you buy, period, whether they are physical or not. And so if physical ever goes away, then you still have the rights to own that stuff. And I think that that is equally important as being able to have the option. So, and then I think we already covered that too. Yeah, we covered. That was the first thing we covered. Cool. We got through all the major news today. So anyway, I am really excited to see Final Fantasy VII Remake doing well on the Switch 2. The last time we got a sales update for Final Fantasy VII Remake was all the way back in 2023. And back then, we found out that the game had sold 7 million copies. And looking at the way that this is going, I can easily see us being at 8 or maybe even $9 million on 9 million. I could easily see us being at 8 or 9 million units sold. I think 8 is a pretty conservative estimate, because I'm willing to bet that it sold at least another million in those 2 years. So I think that Remake is probably closer to 9 million in sales, which is really fucking good. The sales will go up again as they release Part 3, and then they have a triple pack. I think that 7R1 is going to end up being one of the best-selling Final Fantasy games of all time by the time it's all said and done. M2, thank you for this super chat. Speaking of GOG, this is a reminder that Breath of Fire 4 is on sale for $5 on GOG. God damn, that's a good deal. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm actually going to go and buy that. I missed getting the classic Resident Evils last time they were on sale, because they had 2 and 3 on there, and I didn't sell it. I think it's entirely possible for a 7R1 to reach 10 million lifetime sales. I think it's closing in on 9 right now, and I think the 10 million will come in the years after Part 3 comes out. That's my own estimation. But I do think that we're heading close to 10 million, which will make it on par with Final Fantasy 15, although it will take a lot longer than Final Fantasy 15 did to reach 10 million. I think it will actually reach 10 million eventually, because we are 6 years in now. And I want to say that 15 reached it before then. Way before then. It was already at 10 million. So I do think that 10 million is on its way. And once we get the third part out, it will be able to... they'll be able to sell it as a trilogy pack, and that's also going to be another big boost. And I think 7R1 will sit at 10 million. Whether Rebirth and Part 3 get there, I don't think they will, but as anyone who's ever made a multi-part series will tell you, the first part always does the strongest. The second and third parts, or anything else that comes after, don't do quite as strong. At best, they match the first part. There are some cases where video game sequels outsell their previous parts, but it's rare, and usually a lot has to be done to make that title accessible as its own entry in order for it to be. I don't know if 7R will get there, but yeah, so I do think that it will probably reach 10 million though. Marketing conditions right now are unstable. I mean, Metaphor was the fastest selling Atlas game. Then the sales fell off of a cliff. I know they said they won't do it, but Metaphor Simile, like a Persona 5 Royal version, would probably boost those sales again. Because I would love to replay Metaphor. I know that this is a fucking like insane take, but I really don't mind the Persona re-releases that much. I think they're kind of cool. They usually come out long enough for me to want to play the game again, so. Metaphor Riri Fantasio, yeah. Mass Effect 3 was the best-selling games and best-selling one in the trilogy, right? Yeah. Mass Effect was fortunate enough to have like a linear progression, if I'm not mistaken, where Mass Effect 2 sold more than 1 and 3 sold more than 2, I want to say, right? Let me Google that real quick. I don't know. They don't have total sales that comes up. Why do they just have the first week? Someone else look that up for me. Because I don't know. But big if true. The Witcher is also like that too. Each game fed into the next, and ME3 hype was off the charts. Yeah. It's tough. I don't know if there was any way that Square could have made that be the case with Final Fantasy VII Retrilogy. I really don't know if there was like a scenario where whereby they could have done something differently and it made people kind of feed into each part and it grow more and more. I just really don't know. A lot of it is game quality. Witcher was very niche until Witcher 3. All of the 10 out of 10 reviews, marketing helped. Yeah. How do you feel about Atlas saying they want to change gameplay to appeal to a broader audience? Terrible mistake. Terrible mistake. Terrible mistake. Here is how you increase the audience, chat. You want to know how to increase your audience as a game developer? What you do is you up production. That's how you create broader appeal, right? You make it look better and you make it feel better and you increase the appeal of what your core desirable aspects of your game are, right? And we've seen that with a lot of different series where basically all they did was like really increase the production value of what they were doing. Yeah, and they kept to their strengths. And then the game blew up. Right? Like Final Fantasy 6 and 7 is like a perfect example of this, right? Final Fantasy 7 is really just a higher production Final Fantasy 6. 100%. Right? Like gameplay wise, FF7 doesn't tremendously do that much different from Final Fantasy 6. It's literally just Final Fantasy 6 with like $100 million. This is basically what it is, right? And they made it the coolest fucking thing with like the best cinematics in gaming. Actually, the best cinematics in media at the time it launched. And they just pumped that to fucking infinity. And it became like one of the best selling, or what? Yeah, be like second best selling game on the PlayStation 1, right? FF7 to 8 also, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really all it is. Persona, yeah, Persona is also like a great example of that. Mad Kaiser with like Persona 5. Persona 5, other than like having like actual dungeon design, which by the way, isn't something that hasn't been done before in video games. But other than having like real high quality dungeon design, Persona 5 does not do anything that Persona 4 didn't do in terms of like just general game design, and even narrative beats in a lot of ways are kind of like formulaic from Persona 4. However, Persona 5 upped the production to the fucking limit. To the fucking sky. And then all of a sudden people were like, yo, What is that game? Well, it's literally just like, if we're being objective, like the game design is just an improved Persona 4. And Persona 4 in a lot of ways is just an improved Persona 3 in terms of gameplay. Um, they just kept upping the production. P5 changed the way we look at the presentation in games across every genre. Yeah. I think that Persona 5 does not get enough credit. I really think that it does not get enough credit. You guys have to understand Persona 5, like Persona in general, is a fucking a dating sim dungeon crawler that's also basically like delivered like a visual novel with characters standing in like a little diorama. This was especially true up until like Persona 5. Whereas like diorama like environments and visual novel, and it's basically a Tokimeki memorial like in terms of like the stat building stuff. Like you choose what you do each day, and then you go and build your stats, and then you choose who to spend time with and that type of stuff. So it's basically just like a Tokimeki memorial like, and they added like dungeon crawling to it, and there's like a Pokemon thing. And then when you put all that together, it's like the most incredibly niche product ever imaginable, right? But like, here's the thing. They got incredible character design. They have fucking banging ass music. They have the best menus that you've ever seen. They make everything that you do fucking stylish. Sometimes you're just hitting the X button on a fucking menu, and it feels like it has like the same type of gratifying feeling of you pulling off a fucking combo in an action game. Right? Like, but in reality, you just hit like a fucking button in a menu. Everything feels satisfying and good to do. The production quality is good. It's really appealing. And so they just made like the best version of that thing possible. But on paper, that's like the most niche thing ever. Right? Like, and this is kind of an issue with Square Enix, right? And again, this isn't to like go at like modern FF necessarily, but this is kind of like the problem as I see it, right? Square will say, "Oh, we have to move this direction because we want to expand our audience." But if Persona 5 tried to expand the audience, it would have failed. It wouldn't have done like, it wouldn't have ironically expanded the audience at all. But also, too, if you tried to pitch Persona 5 as a 10 million selling game, and again, it's a fucking dating sim that has dungeon crawling elements, and it's also kind of like visual novel formatted, and also, by the way, you build stats like you do in Tokimeki Memorial, which was the game that basically invented the calendar game and the stat building date sim genre. So really all Persona games are like Tokimeki Memorial likes. So yeah, like which by the way, you think about it, and like Tokimeki Memorial was never localized to the West, right? Because no one fucking would think, oh yeah, dude, Tokimeki Memorial. That's a game that if we just added dungeon crawling to it, would sell 10 million fucking copies. 100% of the way. All we need to do is just add a part where you go to the dungeon to Tokimeki Memorial, and it'll blow the fuck up. Nobody would think that. No one. And so I think when you try to make things that are like, I want to make a 10 million seller, and then you go and like just like research everything that sells 10 million, that's the one thing that will guarantee you not making a 10 million seller. You can't just be like, what is like really popular right now and what is like more likely to sell 10 million? I think what makes you more likely to break through such a massive like ceiling like that is really just sticking to the appeal of the game and increasing the appeal of that. You can't say, water down what your series is and then expect 10 million people to show up because you've made it more like the games that are selling 10 million already. You really can't do that. You have to make something that is original and that appeals to people. And yeah. Low key, this was the issue with 16. It felt like they asked themselves what will sell. I mean, that was definitely a problem. They essentially were like trying to emulate Game of Thrones, and that's something that they were accused of before with Final Fantasy 16. And then they actually just came out and said, yeah, we made everyone on the team watch Game of Thrones in order to try to capture its tone. And I was just thinking, I'm like, man, you shouldn't be trying to emulate something about that is so far removed from what you personally make. Klex, thank you so much for the 100 bits. By the way, it seems you are correct. Mass Effect 3 sold more than 2, which sold more than 1. Andromeda broke that trend, though, yeah. Andromeda did break that trend. Yeah, so it was like a steady climb for Mass Effect. And The Witcher was also a steady climb. Yeah, FF isn't a general audience game. The more it tries to be, the more it alienates its existing audience, so the worse reputation it'll get, which makes new fans woe to get into it. Yeah. Again, I think that turn-based games were never really super popular, right? Like the most popular genre ever. And I don't know why, like, everyone acts like back when FF7 came out, that turn-based games were more popular than they are now. They weren't. Turn-based games are more popular now than they were when FF7 first came out. Which is also why, like, them investing that much money on FF7 was fucking insane at that time. But it worked out, right? So you kind of just have to, like, make something and then just believe in it. See, the thing is, I think being inspired by things outside of video games is good, but the problem with FF16 was they wanted to copy it. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit too close to its inspirations for sure, and then at the same time, it doesn't surpass them in any particular way. A certain streamer is convinced that classic Final Fantasy is one of the most popular turn-based games of all time. I'm being shade. I mean, classic Final Fantasy is definitely one of the most popular turn-based games of all time. But I mean, I think that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that even in 97, making a turn-based game that expensive wasn't a good idea. And so they say it's not a good idea now. And I'm not even necessarily arguing for turn-based with this argument. I'm arguing for, like, how unpredictable success with creativity can be. It's probably more of a sane bet now for them to make with Final Fantasy than it was even back then, because now turn-based games are more popular than ever, and there are multiple million-plus seller turn-based games, whereas there weren't as many before Final Fantasy and Persona came into the picture, and obviously Pokemon. So, yeah. Turn-based games are never the end thing, which is why developers keep making action games now that the tech allows for it more easily than it used to. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, when you're making $100 million+ bet, you want to bet on the safest thing possible, right? And yeah. Persona 5 walks, so E33, Metaphor, and Baldur's Gate 3 could run for sales. Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. JRPGs as a genre really only became popular because of Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, in the West, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, um, yeah, but you know, JRPG fans are so jaded about JRPGs becoming popular. They really don't want JRPGs to become popular. The moment a Trails game like breaks like a 1 million or 2 million like sales, like goes fucking viral, and people like really start to like hop on Trails as a series, the moment that happens, Trails fans are going to say that's the worst Trails game. I am calling it right now. We in our lifetimes will get a Trails game that sells like somewhere between 2 and 4 million, and it'll be really well liked, and Trails fans will fucking hate it. I am telling you right now, they will say it's the worst game in the series, and they will fucking hate Trails. And at that point, they will tell you to go play like Xenoblade instead. I guarantee you, bro. The moment that Trails starts selling good and people like it, people will fucking like Trails fans will start to hate Trails. Like then you'll see them be like, it's not even a good Trails game, actually. That Trails game sucks ass. It's the worst one. I'm telling you right now, JRPG fans need victimhood in order to survive and thrive. If they cannot be victims, they don't know who they are. They need it. They need it. That's why every time a JRPG gets popular, they fucking hate it. They hate it. Isn't that gatekeeping? I mean, that's what JRPG fans do. I want a AA mainline FF game so that they can be weird and more fun again. I think the whole industry needs to dial down production costs so Versus 13 won't be an issue again. Yeah, I mean, I think we're already seeing the AA game winning, right? And not just E33, but also stuff like Dispatch, which I think was one of the best experiences of last year. Metaphor, right? Astrobots. So I think that the AA game is already kind of winning. Like it's already kind of, that is where the real novel experiences are coming from at this point. Sorry, I had to snack on something. What is something that is something nerdy that is still unpopular? I can't think of anything. That means that it's so nerdy that we don't even know. We don't even know it exists. Protein bar? No, I'm actually eating unhealthy. Rare sighting. I'm eating chocolate. Oops. Yeah, I'm eating chocolate because that's the only thing that's by me right now. Yeah, I can't really think of anything that doesn't really, you know. But also too, like, you know, just having a niche is like really important to being able to grow successfully. What's nerdy that isn't popular? Math. People still objectively hate math. I'm sure that there are still like a lot of math competitions, But I think that like in order to make something popular, you don't need to make the thing that is like currently like mainstream popular. You need to find a bunch of people that would just like a misfit type thing. I don't know if that makes sense. But if you ask most people, do they like turn-based combat, for example, they probably say no. But I think that like if you do it well enough, you'll get people who are you'll attract all the people who are interested in it. Audiences are made by niches, right? And then sometimes those niches grow until they explode into the mainstream, right? So when you look back on anything that's ever popular, what happens is that it starts niche and then it goes out into the mainstream. But if you ever look at something that's basically been designed to be mainstream, it never fucking goes mainstream. I can't tell you anything that I know that was like basically engineered to be mainstream and then it goes mainstream. It's usually something that starts niche and then it grows outward and people adopt it because it's novel and new. Right? As much as people make fun of that meme or like, you know, use that meme where they're like, oh, there's been no turn-based game since Final Fantasy X, and then Expedition 33 came out. You guys know the one I'm talking about, right? How they say people act like there's been no turn-based game since FF10 and then E33. Sometimes they include Persona 5 in that as like a middle point, but what I'm trying to say is that for a lot of people in the mainstream, Final Fantasy might have been their only experience with the turn-based game for real. Like for real, for real. And yeah, so for them, it's like the novelty of that experience disappeared. And so, but that's actually a very valuable thing for Final Fantasy to have, right? Because in their heads, they own that experience. And so for something else to come along and kind of look like Final Fantasy X a little bit and vaguely remind them enough of Final Fantasy X, that is actually a benefit to Square. That actually shows you the power that Square has, that Final Fantasy in particular has. That's a good thing for Final Fantasy. That's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing for FF. And the fact that that meme gets used actually shows that Final Fantasy has an ownership over a certain style of turn-based and presentation. That's why I think at least a double A turn-based FF is in development, whether it's FF9 remake or original. Yeah, for sure. I think that they should do it just because there's an audience for it. And I know some people are like, well, why don't you just go play Bravely Default? But I'm like, dude, this is capitalism. If Square is trying to make money and they want to make the most money possible, just make a double A FF turn-based game. Right? Like, it's branding, baby. Yeah, exactly. Like, just make it. Just make it. It's profitable. Like, if people will not stop complaining about it until they do, just do it. Just do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, make the fucking money. The fandom wars and stuff like that is irrelevant. If you want to be a smart capitalist, make the fucking money. Make the product. People will buy it. And then they'll even praise you for going back to it. And yeah. More of the story, don't be closed-minded, but also tell devs in a clear way when you don't like specific aspects of the game. Yeah, for sure. Man, no other journalist I know with any sources can agree on the status of FF9 remake, but it was definitely double A at some point. Yeah. Everyone has different sources on what FF9 remake is supposed to be like. But that's fine. I actually think that doing FF9 Remake Double A was a good idea, assuming that it still exists and it's not canceled. But these classifications like double A and triple A don't really mean much unless you attach them to tangible dollar figures. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, they are vibes based. They are kind of vibes based. Everything is just doesn't look expensive, so double A, you know. Asano has been making solid turn-based FFs for over a decade, but it doesn't have the brand on it, so it doesn't matter. Love capitalism. Yeah. Well, I also think though too that to be fair, Asano turn-based FF games are very much rooted in like SNES nostalgia and not PlayStation era Final Fantasy and like what that meant to people. In which case, I would say that E33 is closer to PlayStation era FF than anything that I think that Team Asano has put out. I think that they have plenty of service for SNES FF, but they don't have much for like PS1 FF. Like most people are looking for PS1 FF again. They're not looking for like, oh, I want to play like because Bravely Default, for example, is like Final Fantasy V, like more FF5. And if you think about it, Bravely Default has reached probably everyone who played FF5 and more. But the problem is that people are looking for more 7 through 10, not more FF5. And so, yeah, I think that the Team Asano games do make plenty of like turn-based FF like games, but none of them are the style that people are looking for. They're looking for PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 FF is what is that's the void and not that. Yeah, people want something that looks like another Final Fantasy X, basically, or is like more along the lines of how Final Fantasy 8 or 9 made them feel. Which, bluntly, one is just not going to be an HD 2D game. It's not, right? Because those games are associated with a high level of visual fidelity and cinematic graphics, right? You got to remember that like FF really did a lot to invent like the cinematic AAA video game, right? Like making a game like a film, that's Final Fantasy. And Metal Gear. But Final Fantasy was also one of the co-pioneers of that, of making like the film-like video game. And so people have an association with Final Fantasy and being like this big film-like game. And the series is still like that, by the way. I think if you look at 13, 15, 16, 7R games, they're all still like, yeah, we're a film and a video game. Standard AAA stuff now, but was incredibly innovative back when they did it for the very first time, right? And so I think that like if you look at the Team Asano games and like the PS1 era onward and having that level of cinema, I think that HD 2D just doesn't really match the cinematic vibes. But again, if you like Super Nintendo Final Fantasy a lot, then I think that like Square Enix's library outside of Final Fantasy that's turn-based is still like really thorough. But if you're looking for something that captures PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 FF, they're just there isn't anything, and I think that E33 hit on that. You also have to remember that PS1 and PS2 FF is like their biggest audience, essentially. Like that's like their audience ceiling currently. And so I do think that that is also part of why stuff like the HD 2D games aren't really appealing to that audience. I think the HD 2D games are obviously doing phenomenally well, but in terms of like whether it can reach like everybody who played Final Fantasy X, for example, wants to go play, uh, say, Bravely Default. I think that that's not really the case. And also, games are not just like one component. That's also another thing too. It's not just that like, oh, hey, it's a Final Fantasy game because it's turn based. You know, you know what I'm saying, or anything like that. It's multiple different things that kind of define what those games are, and so you can't just like look at one single aspect and say, oh, well, if you want turn based, go play this. Because I still don't think that like I really don't think that any games that are coming out right now are really like Final Fantasy 7 through 10. I think that there's only been two games outside of Final Fantasy 7 through 10 that feel reminiscent of Final Fantasy 7 through 10, and that's Lost Odyssey and probably E33. Those feel, and I think Fantasian for different reasons, but yeah, I would say yeah, Fantasian, E33, and Lost Odyssey are like kind of the only three that fit into being like that PS1 era Final Fantasy. But most people are just like, it's turn based, so it's a Final Fantasy game. Well, every turn based game has real time elements, is a E33 clone, and you know, yeah. Pixel Remaster sold extremely well too. They could do the Zelda thing and release old school FFs in that style, as well as the new games with cutting edge graphics and I don't think anyone will care if they do 2D Final Fantasy games. To be honest, I don't think that they will do much better than like Octopath and shit already is. I don't think that, and also the turn based audience that is still looking for like turn based Final Fantasy games, I don't think they'll care. I don't think they'll care. They want something that makes them feel like those era of Final Fantasy games did. And I do think the quality of cinema is actually really important to that. Like that's like a core defining feature of that. And I don't think that any 2D FF has that. I don't think so either. Like it really has to be like FF7 through 10. Yeah, like it'd have to be something that's like actually like FF7 through 10. And it's tough too because like I said, like those games, it was more than just like turn based. It was also like their vibes and like their tone and how they use their cinematics. Their progression systems were also like really cool and really innovative. Um, the kind of like game flow, like Sakaguchi had like a very precise formula for how he made those games, and there's like a certain pacing to all of them that's it's just like a flawlessly good pacing. Like when I went back and played like Final Fantasy 7 OG again recently, I was going back to that game. I was like, fuck, this shit is so well paced. Like it is just so good in the way that it keeps delivering shit to you throughout the game and constantly make the game feel like it's opening up and like all the way basically until you get to the final boss fight. It continues to feel like there is more and more game, and it just keeps opening up in like a really satisfying way. It's so good. It's so well paced. Every fucking part of the narrative, how it's delivered, is good. And that whole era of like 7 through 10 where they hit their stride like really hard in terms of making games, they all feel like that. And I do think that 4 through 6 also, you know, are really exceptional, and that's like how they really began to start like getting into that stride, especially with 6. But yeah, so it's not just like, oh, you can make a turn-based game and slap Final Fantasy on it and then it would be like more 7 through 10. I think that there are other aspects of those games that don't get talked about enough. And I also think that action Final Fantasy would not be as rejected if those games considered those aspects. And the only game that has really considered those aspects is Final Fantasy VII Retrilogy, because it fucking had to. It had to consider like everything about FF7 and then bring that into the modern games. But you look at, say, like, you know, 15 or 16, they were kind of like, well, we can cut this or we can cut that. Not a big deal. Doesn't fit into our current vision. With Retrilogy, though, they basically were like, we have to implement this. We can't not implement the airship. It has to be there, right? We can't make Cloud the only playable party member. We have to have all the characters playable, otherwise it's not FF7, right? Colossal Sword, thank you so much for the super chat. An FF8 sequel, like Where Men's Wheat, where men's wins. Sorry, I can't talk today. An FF8 sequel, like Where Men's Meet, would be badass. I haven't played like Where Winds Meet, but isn't that an MMO? How would an MMO sequel to FF8 work? Again, thank you for the super chat. Not gonna lie, I think I prefer Remake and Rebirth over OG. I just don't have nostalgia for it since I played 8, 9, and 10 before the OG. It's complicated for me. I think that Remake and Rebirth are better games, like video games, to play in modern times than VOG. Like, I do feel like if I sat down someone young and I put both games in front of them, they would probably have the better experience with the Retrilogy than they would with like anything else, right? Like if I put you know, anything else in front of them, I don't think that they have as good of a time. But I don't know. I still think that the OG does a lot of narrative stuff exceptionally well in a way that I don't think a lot of aspects of the Retrilogy do better. Some of those things, like the blood trail, are out of their control because that's just what the ESRB and Zero and all the ratings boards said that they have to do. Some stuff is in their control, like Dine or whatever is going on with the Arbiters of Fate. I do have a weird feeling, a very weird feeling, that a lot of people are going to hate Part 3's ending or just hate Part 3 in general, and I'm going to be like one of the people that thinks it's fucking awesome. And I mean that specifically in terms of the story. I feel like I am going to be one of the people that's like, actually, Part 3 is GOAT. And like a ton of other people will fucking hate it. I really do. I usually lose interest in a game when the map opens up too much. I had to replay both FF7, 8, and DQ8 to reach the ending. I put them aside the first time I played. I mean, yeah, some people just really like a very linear game that's super tightly delivered. I can understand that. You and me both, brother. Just like how we feel about Silent Hill F. Dude, I thought Silent Hill F, still think, that Silent Hill F is one of the most incredible stories that I've ever fucking gone through in a video game and like in a piece of media. That shit like fucked me up. I thought it was so cool. And then I go on to like the Silent Hill community and they're like, this shit fucking is cheeks. And I'm like, dang, okay. But I thought it was like one of the most provocative pieces of media ever. But you love Silent Hill 2 remake then? Probably so. I was so surprised they hated it, man. I think that this is definitely one of the situations where if Silent Hill F was like a brand new IP, it probably would have gotten a lot more praise and admiration because a lot of people just wanted it to be a more Silent Hill thing. And I get that, especially as a Final Fantasy fan and like what we're currently going through. But yeah, man, I also just don't fucking care. I also just thought it was like a really, really, really fucking well written and directed game. And I don't give a fuck if people like it or don't like it or whatever the fuck. So I agree. It has a better narrative than E33, to be honest. E33's Act 3 was a little mishandled. E33 could have been my favorite game of all time but I think Act 3 like fumbles the bag for me. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I know a lot of people love Act 3, and for them, like, that's where it becomes like super special. But I just feel like Act 3 was, without spoiling it, was not handled properly. Um, Act 3 also fumbles for me. Yeah, like it could have been like my goat, but then Act 3 just kind of fumbles the game for me in like a lot of ways, both in terms of gameplay and in terms of narrative. I think Act 3 is like, I was so into the story until then. Yeah, and then I also feel like too that I don't like either of the endings, and I don't think either of them send um I don't think either of them send a particularly great message, if I'm honest. I know a lot of people say that the Verso ending does. I don't actually agree that it's, and I don't think that Mael's ending also sends like the best message thematically either. And I don't want to get into it for people who haven't beaten the game yet in chat, but yeah. Blitz's YouTube Shorts career thrives in Act 3. I know. I think both send a heartbreaking message, and that's it. Yeah. Yeah, I do too. But I still think it's one of the best games of all time. Like, somewhere in the top 50. I don't know where it ranks, but I would say that it's one of the best video games ever made. But I just think it sucks because like, I think if Act 3 and some of the stuff around the ending was better, then it probably would have been in like my top 5 games of all time, and maybe even clutched number 1. But I think that they just fumble some stuff for me that made me go like, that pushed it down a little bit. I think that E33, like, E33 gets severely underrated by kind of the JRPG masses, but it also is not like a flawless game either, for sure. It is also not perfect. I think some people insist that it's perfect, but I do think I don't retract like my 10 out of 10 for it. Because like I said, I would still call it one of the best video games of all time. But 10 out of 10 for me is not like, oh, it's a perfect video game. It's just more like it delivers like a level of exceptionalism that we're going to look back on in a decade and think of that as like, yeah, that was like one of the defining experiences of the entire medium. We're still going to think about this game in a decade from now. It's impactful, and the overwhelming majority of it is a fairly flawless experience up until that point. So I still stick by my 10 out of 10 of it, but I do think that Act 3 could have been better, for sure. I feel like if any other Final Fantasy game gets the FF7 remake treatment, it has to be Final Fantasy X. Do you agree? Yes. Like, if any other Final Fantasy would get the 7R treatment, it would be 10. But I don't want it to receive it. And that's not a slight against FF7R, by the way. It's just like, I don't know how you can really remake Final Fantasy X and it keep the soul of Final Fantasy X. I think it's actually harder to do in a lot of ways than even 7. I don't know, because again, as much as I think that this 7R battle system should be the future of the series, I think that conditional turn-based combat can't be replaced by it. Like, you can't just be like, oh, we're putting 7R combat in like Final Fantasy X or putting it in 10-3. I won't accept it. It's not good enough. I also think too that Final Fantasy X has like a really immaculate pacing. And even doing something as simple as putting enemies like on the field and making them visible, and thereby getting rid of random battles, would actually severely change the vibe of Final Fantasy X. Right? Because Final Fantasy X, like, when you go back and look at those environments, if you imagine a ton of enemies on them, I mean, even if they redesign the environments completely and there's just like a ton of enemies on them, uh, it would change the actual structure and pacing of those games. This is actually like one of the things that gets like less talked about when we talk about action FF versus turn-based FF, is that they changed a lot more than just the style of combat. They changed the meta game that is more strongly associated with Final Fantasy perhaps than even the turn-based combat itself to accommodate for the action. And that is what causes the disconnect more than anything else, I believe. Although the style of combat obviously is important too. But I think that disconnect gets basically not talked about in any capacity. And it might actually even be more important um, than anything else. Nostalgia is good, but I prefer new titles. FF10 can be played now without too many issues. Right. If you're asking me what I would prefer a new Final Fantasy inspired by 10 than Final Fantasy 10 remake if I had to choose between the two. Nice Guy Prince, I would love for a Final Fantasy X to receive a prequel, a remake, and a proper sequel of the same quality of Final Fantasy X Retrilogy. Yeah, I wouldn't mind, like 10 getting more stuff, but it's just hard because 10 is a very much a product of its time, and I feel like updating it would be fucking brutal. Like, because like I said, you change like a couple of things and you change the vibe of the game entirely. So it's difficult. Like, I wouldn't want the battle system to really change. Yeah, there hasn't been like a Final Fantasy X focused expansion in Final Fantasy 14. But granted, if we're talking about FF14, then like, bro, I don't want FF14 8.0 to have a theme around any other Final Fantasy other than FF14. I think FF14 needs to escape nostalgia super bad. Josh Z, thank you so much for the super chat. E33 wasn't written to have a climax that feels satisfying. It's supposed to illustrate what happens when people at the center of a conflict are selfish. It is very intentional writing, even if people hate it. No, yeah, for sure, man, for sure. 100%. And thank you again for the super chat. Yeah, I think that that's what they wanted to accomplish. And I think that they did do it. I guess that's also why I can't be like terribly critical of it in that sense, because they just didn't go in a direction that I thought was appropriate for it. But they created like what they wanted to create. And though I disagree with the direction like and why they go in it, I still respect them as artists and think that that was like, it's not bad, it's not terrible, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I just think that it could have like landed better without having to feel forced in some ways, because that's kind of like my issue with it, is that I think it feels forced in a lot of ways without having to spoil too much for people. IDK man, maybe those changes would make FF10 better. You never know. It depends on what changes and how, but I think that like what I appreciate about 10, it's if you do make those changes, then it would definitely change the impression of the game. Maybe that would be better, or maybe that would be worse, but it would change a lot. And I don't think that that's always necessarily bad. But a lot of those games were made around how PS2 that they were. So I feel like it would rob the artistic integrity of it in some ways, which I don't think, that everyone necessarily cares about in the same way that I do. I just couldn't get into E33 because of how pretentious the concept was and the over the top in the worst way. I like the game with souls, not just depressing slop. Not for me. Really? It's pretty good. It is depressing though. You should never play the Nier games. Robert, you should never play the Nier games. You'll fucking hate them then. Um, but I tend to like stuff like Nier and E33, Silent Hill F, that type of thing. So that for me is like right up my alley. I really think Square Enix needs to look back at themselves, just like when Capcom looked back on themselves after they made Resident Evil 6 and accepted that they went off track, right? I think that Tabata actually had like the right tone for talking about this stuff, where he was basically was like um saying like stuff like about how they fell off and how they lost their way. I think that 15 clearly did not get them back on track, but I think that his analysis of what was going wrong was true. Nier Automata and Silent Hill 2 have the most depressing stories ever. Yeah. I love a good depressing story for sure. I like characters like SKA and the humor stopped E33 from becoming just that. Yeah, no, for sure. The humor in E33 is like really well fucking done. It's a masterclass for sure. Why did Tabata leave? We don't know the 100% real, like for sure reason, but according to him, he says that he couldn't make the type of games that he wanted to make at Square Enix. So that's kind of the surface level. Um, Japanese word for this would be tatemai, which means public stance, official stance. So that's kind of like the tatemai for like why he left is he couldn't make the games that he wanted to make at Square. He felt he had to leave and start his own studio. But as for like what really happened, I don't know. And right now he's working on, I mean, basically all the stuff he started out with JP Games and he's making like a Paralympics game where it was like, I mean, a game for the Paralympics. I guess there's no need to elaborate on that, but yeah, it was a game that was like based on like the Paralympics, and it was cool. And essentially now what he's working on is a bunch of like AI shit. He was like working on like some NFT stuff for a while and crypto stuff. And then that amounted to nothing. And then now, from what I recently saw, he's working on like some AI project. Basically, he gets a ton of funding from all of these venture capitalists, and he tries to make games with it. And I just don't think that any of them have ever released other than the Paralympics one, which was active for a little while, and I don't think it's active anymore. And that's it. So, yeah, I haven't been super into anything that JP Games, his new company, has been up to. I think that they've just been making a ton of just garbage, if I'm like completely honest, like from the looks of it. Because again, most of it is like Web3 NFT bullshit, and I'm not interested. But uh, yeah, they haven't really done much interesting. Let me see if I can actually find it. I don't know if I can find it anymore, but he had like a brand new piece of footage for like the project he was working on. Apparently something he was working on was going to be Final Fantasy. Like, I'll pull it up. Hold on. So, yeah, the Paralympics game that he had made was called the Pegasus Dream Tour. And that actually did release, but everything else, he says, a team of experts who continue to pursue novelty, fun, and beauty of games. Studio was established by a group of game developers from various fields with the purpose of expanding the possibility of games themselves. We have now expanded our studio with a staff of young talent, creators, and you see like all these concepts for games and stuff, but like none of this I think has actually released yet. And also, I don't know what the hell is going on in most of this, but I think that, is this the one? Because he's supposed to be working on this game where it's like a fantasy version of Japan, and I don't know if they have it on their website. I guess not. You'd have to ask Daryl. He's the one that's more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am with Tabata. You still going to Japan for your honeymoon? Yes, I am. And in fact, I want to try to crowdfund some of it. Because obviously we have to do that. We have to have like a wedding, and it's all like a lot of money. So I'm thinking about doing something to maybe crowdfund or raise money for it. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe we'll do like the Final Fantasy 15 essay, and it'll be like a thing where I'm doing like FF15 streams, and then people can come and donate to that, and then that'll of course be followed by the FF15 essay. Panda Eyes, you're in Japan? That's cool. Are you Japanese, or do you just live there? Do you think SE should ever get Sakaguchi back for a mainline FF? Very surprisingly, my answer is they probably could, but I don't think that they actually should. I think that Sakaguchi would be great to have on as a consulting guy, but I think that if they got Sakaguchi back working on the series, it would kind of put them in a bad situation, because the problem is that they need to be able to make Final Fantasy without Sakaguchi, right? Sakaguchi is not getting any younger, and he's already been trying to retire for a long time now. How old is Sakaguchi again? I want to say he's like close to hitting 60 now, or maybe he's already there. Oh yeah, he's been there. Dude, Sakaguchi is 63 years old. So he's 63. Game development takes a lot out of you. I think it would be awesome to see Sakaguchi come back and be like, we're going to do a Final Fantasy game like one last time. I'm going to like pump one out. But I don't know if that'd be a good idea. I think the best idea for them is to figure out how to make Final Fantasy on their own. I think that's what they need to do. But I do think having Sakaguchi involved is not a bad idea. Does he have a son that is following in his footsteps? I don't know. I know he has like he has a daughter. I believe his daughter's name is Aya, and she's named after Aya Brea, actually. Yeah, I guess bringing him back does feel a bit regressive, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible. And I think he would feel that way about it. Like, oh fuck, you guys need me again? Can't you figure out how to make this shit on your own? Right? So I don't know if bringing him back would necessarily do the thing. Like, Square Enix needs to figure out how to make Final Fantasy feel like Sakaguchi Final Fantasy, or feel like something that people think is as good or better than Sakaguchi Final Fantasy on their own. That's the way for lasting success for them. I love it if FF17 was one last hurrah for the old guard, Kitase, Nomura, Nojima, Sakaguchi. I would love that too. I think that that would be phenomenal if we could get that one last hurrah. But it would also have to be exactly that too. You know what I'm saying? It'd have to be that one last thing, and then they would still kind of like have to go back and like figure this shit out themselves. So, like I said, it'd be fun, but they do have to like get it together, figure it out. So they can't just be like, "Oh, we're gonna call Sakaguchi up because we still can't make, you know, a thing without him." You know. I wish FF17 would just return to a simpler turn-based mechanic-focused game. Um, I think that wouldn't be like a terrible idea, for sure. I'm not opposed to it. I think that that's definitely an option that's on the plate for them. I don't think that they necessarily have to do that. I think that they can also pursue the 7R style of game, but whatever they do, they need to not do another like thing that they've been doing. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm excited for Remake 3. Actually, I'm really excited for Remake 3. I just want an expansion to Retrilogy's combat and do not chase the success of E33. Yeah, and I mean, while E33's success is very much predicated on a hole in the market for a type of game that Final Fantasy isn't anymore, I think that if they just go back because they saw E33, that they're just chasing a different trend. Um, which I don't know if that would be like fruitful for them to do. I think the best thing that they can do is continue to build on 7R, right? But I'm not opposed to them going back to turn based. But I don't think that if they do go back to turn based, it should just be like, oh, we made it like an E33 like or anything like that. Yeah, we're also way overdue for Dragon Quest 12 and Kingdom Hearts 4. More Kingdom Hearts 4 than anything else though. Kingdom Hearts 4 is the situation's getting fucking desperate, bro. It is getting fucking desperate for Kingdom Hearts, bro. I do think that we're gonna find out more about KH4 this year. I do think that this is the year for real, for real. But it has just been so demoralizing if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan. It sucks. It's such a gnarly situation, man. AP Zone Runner, the guy who runs RPG site, implied it was 2027. Don't know if you saw it. No, I didn't see. Alex Donaldson said that. Can you send that to me? DM it to me. Turn base, ATB, switching party members mid battle. If it comes to ATB, Square Enix did a good job. I think Square think the same. If they're going to do a turn-based system, it has to be something brand new, much like they did with FF13. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Clout. Also, I never played Neo Tweeby. Is that game good? Yeah, it's good. Sadly, it doesn't seem like Kiryu is changing Wada or Matsuda's formula in terms of business. They should start there and learn from Capcom. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell about Kiryu so far because everything that Kiryu has in the works, or everything that's currently in the pipeline, is basically been in the pipeline since Matsuda was there. So we haven't had something that was purely Kiryu's doing yet. I don't really think. Almost everything was in the works when Matsuda stepped down. So it's really hard to say. Final Fantasy 17 will probably be like one of the first few big things that we see that's purely Kiryu's overseeing. But yeah. So that will kind of test him as a CEO for sure. But in terms of Matsuda, I mean, yeah, all this stuff that we're currently seeing is still him. Can't really judge Kiryu yet. He straight up said, "Give me 3 years." Yeah. You can't turn around like all the mess that Square Enix has going on in like, you know, a couple, like even like a year or two. It's gonna take years. The Dirge of Cerberus event? No, actually, I haven't seen it. Can we pull that up? Hold on, one sec. I don't know why my browser does that. Okay, let me pull it up on stream. One sec. Okay, let me fix. That's interesting. Wait, is this? Yeah, it's an event. So does this mean they're not doing like the totality of Dirge of Cerberus and Ever Crisis? That they're just doing an event, or how is that going to work? If any veteran Ever Crisis people know, but I was under the impression originally. I mean, I guess that also happened to what do you call it? Advent Children as well, right? Because Advent Children also turned into an event rather than a full thing, like it was originally going to be. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is about Kingdom Hearts 4. This is from Alex Donaldson, very reliable journalist, very reputable. He says, no, as for 2027, there is obviously a crucial year of development between then and now, but there is that old saying about buses. Oh, wait, was this out of order? You wait for one for ages, then two come along at the same time? Interesting. Does that mean DQ12 and Dragon and Kingdom Hearts 4? Does it mean like two Kingdom Hearts games at the same time? That's interesting. And then there's one more thing. Let me see. He says here, the original thing he was replying to says, sorry, let me unfuck the cropping here. I think it's possible we see the next expansion for 14 this December, since clues pointed to having a winter vibe as opposed to the summer Dawntrail vibe, the summer vibe that Dawntrail had. But more likely it'll be Q1 2027. KH4, who knows? FF7R3 almost certainly 2027. FF17 probably 2028. DQ12, who knows? And I don't think FF9 remake is happening at all. Awesome. And then he says, I think the process that leads to Kingdom Hearts 4, an announced game with a known dedicated team sequestered in a different city with an external stakeholder that will be applying a level of pressure slash expectation to release a game on a reasonable timeline, being a totally unknown, but FF17, a game we know nothing about, quite possibly without an available team, which at this stage may or may not be in actual production, being probably 2 years away, to be wild, TBH. Interesting. That is interesting. When did this happen, actually? Can we get a link on this? I don't have a link on this. This was just sent to me right now. So if anyone else does have the link to this, then okay. Clout is about to send it to us, so we're good. We're good. Yeah, because I'm kind of curious too. Yeah, but if you think about it, 2028 will be 5 years since Final Fantasy 16, right? Like, you would expect to see FF17 by 2028 or 2029, because that would be 5 or 6 years out from 16. Who's this post from? AP Zone Runner, also known as Alex Donaldson, who runs RPG Site. Sent the whole thread? Okay. Thanks, King. Let me take a look. Okay, wait. I'll actually zoom this in so the text is a little bigger for you guys. A feeling, scale of interesting. Actually, just go to where he said that. Kind of a tangent, but I'm genuinely curious how long we have to wait for the very first FF17 teaser. He says it's always impossible to rule out we have barely started work, but there's a CG teaser roll of the dice. But if they're going to announce it by showing a material game, which I think lines up with their current attitude, I would not expect anything material until 7R3 is shipping or even has already shipped. They need to stop announcing stuff a million years out and stop clobbing trailers together from extremely early work like the KH4 reveal that'll barely resemble what ends up shipping. That's fair. I think they kind of learned their lesson from Versus, right? Like, and how different 15 ended up being from Versus, and how much we all kind of still hold like 15 to the standard of Versus. So I think that that's also one thing that we're looking at. Someone's replying, I think the only team available for it anytime soon is FF16 team. No, maybe someone more in the know can correct me, but from an outsider POV, the team who made 16 seems to have split in between two groups. One relatively small team under Mihiro's leadership who did the Tactics remaster last year, and the other one seems to involve Hiroshi Takai in some capacity, and they've been working on something since sort of mid-late 2024, probably even earlier if the pre-production starting point on Tactics Remaster, according to Mihiro, is anything to go by. If it's them, they've been working on it for about 2 years, but most games take like 5 years nowadays, so it wouldn't even show up till like 2028 at the earliest, which I guess isn't beyond the pale. I've seen some people think it could involve CS2 and Toriyama. Yeah, I don't think it's CS3 twice in a row. They never do it twice in a row. So I have a hard time believing that it's going to be them twice, back to back. Um, Interesting. Hold on. Let me make this easier to read on for you guys. Oh wait, hold on. Sorry. That would not make it easier. Um, this is fine actually. Square announcing shit way too advanced. Name a more iconic duo. So true. So true. Do these people have sources? No, they don't. As always, you should take any of this shit with a grain of salt, bro. Alex Donaldson, though, obviously is a journalist, great reputation, very reliable. So I trust anything he says. Anyone else on here, kind of just depends. 2026 nothing. 2027 FF7R3, FF14 8.0, Dragon Quest 12, 2028 KH4, FF9 remake, 2029 FF17 14 9.0 new Nier. One could hope that Dragon Quest 12 or the Fable 9 remake are coming in 2026, but I doubt they are completed in the shadows. I doubt he would launch a major game without at least 12 to 9 months of marketing. Why did he put that in reverse? 9 to 12 months of marketing campaign? Maybe. Never be another Crystal Chronicles game. I'm gonna be honest, I never played a fucking Crystal Chronicles game, so I don't know if that's sad or not. Chat, tell me. I just never, kind of never appealed to me, so I never really got into Crystal Chronicles, so I can't really comment too much on that. Does he say anything else? But everyone's speculation here is really interesting. The GameCube one is the best. Yeah, I got a remaster recently, so I guess I could check that out. Next year is definitely 7R3 and maybe Dragon Quest 12. Yeah, so he seems to say that he thinks that Final Fantasy 17 is a long way out, which I don't think anyone disagrees with. Dragon Quest 11 is timeless. Dang, that looks so fucking good. Oh, it's running on PC. I have assets from the PC version, mod it back to the vanilla assets. Oh, okay, so like the OG, like high quality asset. Damn, that looks so good, bro. That looks so good. It sucks that you have to like mod those back in, because if you can mod those back in, why in the hell couldn't Square just like officially make it so that the original high quality assets were put into the 11S version? Uh, Legs weren't good for 16, true. Dragon Quest 12, he says. I mean, they announced Dragon Quest 12 and revealed the logo. They did it for two reasons. One, they wanted to say something about the games on the series' 35th anniversary. The design and the logo at the event were there to affirm that the game was going to be aimed at an older audience and have a darker tone. Of course, the game has been in development for so long that may not even be true, but the point is that at the time, the announcement wasn't so much we're making a new Dragon Quest, because, as you say, it was obvious. It was we are trying something different, which wasn't obvious. Okay, true. Dragon Quest 12 is perhaps a slightly more difficult one to read. Horty has quite openly and recently said that the game has some difficulties in its development. So I don't think anything they said in 2021 is necessarily guaranteed to hold fast. Plus, I do think the deaths will have an inevitable impact. Yeah, as you guys know, Akira Toriyama passed away. And so did Sugiyama, who's the composer for Dragon Quest. Plus, I do think that the deaths will have an inevitable impact on the thinking around what Dragon Quest 12 can/should be. I wonder if they still feel a progressive slash different game is going to be the way when two of the three of its key creators passed away, or they'll angle to something more celebratory of what came before or whatever. That's actually a really good point. SE delisted the normal DQ11 game and replaced it with DQ11S, which uses the Switch Switch graphics while normal DQ uses PS4. Yeah, and so you have to mod the PS4 assets back in. If you get the PC version of Dragon Quest XI-S. That's really interesting. Seeing if he said anything else about it. There's one more page. That and Control were the coolest announcements tonight. Truly baffling how there was no Square Enix presence whatsoever. It's crazy how franchises like FF and Cage get no love at all lately. Do you know anything about what might be going on with games like Cage 4, maybe FF17? Nate the Hate says, as far as I know, the development has been going fine on them. Probably not too eager to show FF7 Part 3 until remake releases on Switch 2 and Xbox next month. Okay. That's all we got then. That was fun. Yeah, hopefully we don't have to wait too much longer than 2028 for FF17, because that will have already been 5 years since 16. And obviously the time between 16 and 15 was 4 years, right? Because 16 launched, well, no, it's not 4 years. 16 launched, it was 7 years. 7 years, actually, fuck. It was 4 years between that and Remake. Remake launched in 2020, and then 16 launched in 2023, so shit, 17 might actually be a long we may not live long enough to see 17 then in that case. It might be over, chat. 17, it might be 7 years, so we might not see Final Fantasy 17 until 2030 if it has the same gap of time in between 16 and 15 did. It'd be 2030. Yeah. But I guess 2030 is only 3 years away from 2027, when we might assume that part 3 comes out, right? So there'll definitely be Final Fantasy stuff in between. But yeah, the likelihood of you dying before 17 comes out is not insignificant. You may literally die before it happens, bro. Kind of sad. This is game development now. I'm not a fan either, but this is the situation. We are closer to 2030 than 2020. Where is time gone? That is very upsetting. Yeah, I don't want to read that. Don't say that. Dragon Quest 11 is almost 9 million. Yeah, DQ11's fucking a beast. It's had like the best sales tail ever. Okay, I think that we are going to call it a stream here. I will be back Friday. Our test went good, guys. We've been able to stream to YouTube and to Twitch at the same time. I'm doing this locally with no bullshit ass subscription, and it's all worked out great. So yeah, you can look forward to Twitch and YouTube streams actually working next time. It's all through OBS and a single like OBS plugin that helps me mirror the stream. So yeah, guys, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. And yes, you can feel comfortable about watching on YouTube or Twitch because we got the problem straightened out. All right, love you guys so much. We'll be back on Friday with another stream. I'll see you then. Peace, people. Later.